Hello everyone, Jeff Stanley with Stanley Handcrafted, and that is not a clickbait title. I actually did make right around $1,000 in 2 nights with a candle winemaking night. All right, I'm cutting into this intro to let you know that this is a very long video. I apologize for that, but there's a lot of information in this one, so I think it will be beneficial, especially for people that want to do a candle making wine night. So I apologize for the length of the video, but it definitely has a lot to offer. So a lot of people that have been following me have been asking about this one for a while, so I figured I'd try to get it into a video instead of a post, because I think I can go into a lot more detail about the candle making wine night that'll make a lot more sense than just writing it up in a post. And along with the explanation, I'm gonna go ahead and put up some photos and some of the prices that I'm gonna be going over in this explanation and kind of what I did. So this whole journey started probably in May. I started thinking about this one with all the paint and wine nights that I see kind of everywhere. I thought it would be a good idea to do a candle making wine night. And I started to search around. I didn't see too many people doing them. At the time, I couldn't find anybody that had done them. Not that I was the first one to come up with this, that's definitely not the case. But searching around the area and then just searching Google for candle making wine nights, I didn't see anything. And since then, I have definitely seen a couple, kind of not really big companies, but smaller companies that do them as well. So I thought it would be a good idea. And the first thing I wanted to do was kind of basically find the venue. So I started to reach out to a few people. And basically what I wanted to do was bring people in, have just like the paint and wine nights, just kind of bring them in, show them how to make candles, go over the basics of everything, and then of course offer wine so they had something to do and something fun to do while they made the candles. So I started to reach out to a few different venues. I basically just started reaching out in DMs, emails, phone calls, and even walking into a few places to see if they would be interested. And what I was looking for was not just a basic open venue hall or something I could rent out. I wanted to find somebody like a winery that had an in-house wine bar. There's a place in town here in Gig Harbor that actually sells wine. They do live music, they do some paint and wine nights. So I reached out to them and they were interested, but we couldn't make it work in time. And then started to reach out to a few different places, like wine bars that actually sell wine in-house. You can go in there and they do have parties and everything like that. I was amazed at how many people did not reach back, even places where you could rent out their rooms. I sent a couple emails and just absolutely nothing. So you're definitely gonna have to be persistent. And if you can, go into these places and talk to them, because you'll get a lot further. I did get a few comments back from Instagram. I even reached out to some wineries to see what they would be able to do. So it's real easy to reach out to a few and not have to go very far to either have them come to the venue or to actually go to their place of business and set up shop there. So along with reaching out to the venue and trying to find some places, I started to kind of figure out the logistics of what would be involved in this. So basically, I started to think about one person coming in. One person coming in, what am I gonna have them do? I wanna have them go through, I wanted to talk about the waxes, soy, paraffin, the parasoy, coconut wax, basically anything, and just go over everything and try to make it as informative as possible. Show them everything and then basically have them get up there, melt their own wax, and then talk to them about the temperatures and everything like that, bring it off of the burner, and then add their own fragrance oils and then pour it themselves. So once I figured out what I wanted them to do, I started to think about how I was gonna do that in somebody else's spot. And the first one I came up with was individual burners, and I'm gonna put up a picture here. Went to Amazon, just started to look at single burners, and they range anywhere from $20 to $50, and it's just a single burner that you plug in, and basically you would just fill your pitcher with wax, put it on the burner, and you'd have everything right at your table. I started to think about this one, and I was thinking maybe 10 to 15 people for the very first class, so I started to add that up, and the burner, $20 to $50, the individual pitchers, right around, well, you can get the small ones, but I'd rather go with the larger ones. They range $8 or $9, so you're looking at getting $20 to $50 per burner per person, which again, you're gonna use that down the road. So it's not, it's an initial upfront cost, but over the long run, if you're gonna be doing this a while, it's not that bad of a cost. You just roll it into the cost of everything that you do, and the profits will eventually outweigh that, of course. So I started to think about that one, but then as I started to go through it, I started to think, how am I gonna do that? Electricity. So if I had 10 to 15 burners going, you've got to think about tables that are going to house all that stuff. So some of the venues that I was looking at are somewhat small, so it started to kind of not make sense. I think it definitely would have worked for 10 people, but that's 10 people. You're gonna have a bunch of power strips. You're gonna have cables running everywhere. So it started to kind of not make sense. And then finally it clicked. I sell these big giant melters, so why not take those? I don't know why that didn't pop into my head the very first time. So I just figured I would take 2 of my melters, and that way wax is constantly going. The only problem with that one is they're not melting their own wax, which isn't a huge deal, but when you think about the candle making process, you're basically melting wax, adding oil, and pouring. There's really not much to it. So you don't want somebody to come in for whatever price you're gonna charge, and they're barely doing 5 minutes worth of work. Even with the wine, it's really not gonna seem worth it. So I had to try and think of other things to make it worth it so that it was a little bit more than just pouring, adding, and pouring again. So what I decided to do was, now that I had the melters, I figured I could bump up the amount of people that were coming in. So I initially started with, I was thinking about the 10 people coming in the first time, but I decided to put that up to 15 because it wasn't that big of a deal. Started to do 15. I set it up for 2 nights, which was November 27th and November 28th. 15 people per night. Started to think about it, started to order the wax. So once I figured out I was gonna use the melters, the next thing to do was to come up with what wax I was gonna use. And this is another one that you definitely wanna think about, because the type of wax you use is gonna determine how long they're gonna be there, waiting for the candles to cool, how long it's gonna take to melt, the kind of throw that they're gonna get. So I went back and forth. As you all know, I use the IGI 6006, so of course that was my very first option to go with. The only problem with 6006 is, in a candle like this, the taller candles, you're gonna get really bad sinkholes. And if you're pouring hotter, or even at lower conditions, you're gonna get sinkholes in these things. And then of course, once the candle's cool, you then have to go over it with a heat gun. So I was trying to figure out how to do that one. And of course, that's not really a big deal when you're at home, you're making candles, but when you're in a group of 15 to 20 people and you have one heat gun for, what is that, almost 60 candles for 20 people, that's a lot of time extra in the night to go through and heat up each individual tops. And of course, you can tell people 100 times, wait till the wax cools down and you won't get the sinkholes that bad, but that's not gonna matter. You're gonna have people that pour right away and they're gonna have bigger sinkholes than some of the other ones. So I started to think of the soy, which again is a very good option. You won't get any sinkholes, or if you do, it's very minimal. It's not that bad, and most people just deal with a little bit of uneven tops or the frosting or whatever it comes along with soy. The bigger problem with soy is that it takes a good hour to an hour and a half to cool down. So if you have your people pouring at 180 to 160 degrees, you still have to wait another hour for those candles to cool down, which is a huge problem, because unless you have the venue set up for that, like if you actually picked a venue that had someplace where they could eat or get more wine at the bar, it's not that bad. People aren't gonna mind waiting around for an hour. But if you're in a venue where it's just you and you're just doing that, you've got to think about the hour-long wait. And for some people, depending on what they're doing, that can really drag out. So I knew that one was out, and I wasn't gonna do soy anyways, but I did think about it. And then the other wax that I do have on hand is the 4627, which isn't too bad. Very good wax, very good throw. The cool down times are pretty good on that one as well. I didn't use that one just because, well, for one, I just didn't have it on hand. I could have ordered it in time, but I haven't done enough testing with that one to really know that that was the best one. So I decided to go with the 6006. So one of the things I came up with the 6006 was to do 2 different candles. I wanted to do the jars, of course, because those are the ones I sell. Everybody around town or anybody that buys them locally, this is the jar that they see in stores and through my website. So jumping to a tin or something like this, not a huge deal, but I kind of wanted people to have the candle like this. The only problem is you're going to be dealing with the sinkholes. So I decided to go with the tins. And the nice thing about the tins is you can pour these and you're not going to get any sinkholes. It's a wide enough container to where you can pour it still hot, and you might get a little bit of a dip in the middle of these, but it's not going to be anything significant, and it's not going to be anything that you have to fix right away. Somebody can wait for this to solidify probably 75–80%, and they'd be able to leave. Whereas these right here, if they left early, now obviously this is a flat one, but if you had one that had a sinkhole in it, they wouldn't be able to leave until that was done. If they did leave with a sinkhole in there, they're gonna leave with a candle that they're not happy with, which ultimately kind of goes against your night and your product and your quality and standards that you'd like to put out there. So that was it. I figured I would put together the 6006 for the wax. I was gonna use the 2 melters I have to melt the wax. And then I had my jars, I had the wicks. I've been pouring these for quite some time, so I know exactly what goes into these. So I knew the wax, I knew the jars, I knew the wicks, I knew everything like that. So the next step was to work on the presentation. How was I gonna present this? Having everybody come in, how was I gonna set it up? And for that one, I decided to go to my website. Anybody could come to the website, they could choose, basically check out with the candle making wine night. You go in there, I have an option to select which type of wine you liked, from rosé to, I don't drink wine, so I had to ask a coworker what were the top wines that you could choose from. So I had reds, whites, rosés, Merlot. I mean, all kinds of stuff like that. Wines that I had no idea what they were. But I wanted to make sure that people had a good option to choose from. So it wasn't just a red or a white. And then people show up disappointed. So I had about 8 different options. And then once you choose your wine, I had the scents that they could choose as well. So you could go through, and I had 4 different scents that they could choose. And I just went with real basic ones: cinnamon, vanilla, lavender, and driftwood. I figured that would cover all bases. You could definitely do more fragrances than that, but you're getting into a little bit more like, how are you gonna take care of that? How are you gonna manage like 10 different scents? Not a huge deal, but definitely something to take into consideration when you're doing that. So I kept it to just the basic 4. I figured some of those scents would be, or at least one of those scents would appeal to somebody or anybody signing up for the class. And then once they chose their wine, they chose their scent, and then I had an option for them to choose something to put on their own labels. And I had pre-printed labels for everybody that showed up. So you could go in there and put, I think the biggest one for the night was Ladies Night 2018. So we probably had about, I don't know, I'd say a good 20-25% of the people that signed up put Ladies Night 2018 on their labels, so that when they got done pouring their candles, or actually not when they were done pouring their candles, so when they started out, everybody had their own labels and they could label them as they wanted. So if they were giving them out as gifts or keeping them for themselves, they were a little bit more personalized, which was kind of nice. So from that, as soon as I got one of the orders, I would let them stack up for a little bit because they were coming in a few at a time, a couple a day. And I set this up probably about 4 weeks in advance, which was a lot more time than I really wanted to do, but I had a lot of preparation, hadn't done it before, so I wanted to give myself enough time and enough people to see it, because I didn't want to sign up for the venue that I was going for, which is a little expensive, and only have like 5 or 6 people show up. So I put it out 4 weeks and got a lot of traffic off of it, had a lot of people signing up. So as soon as an order would come in, I would immediately jump onto the local wine retailer is Bevmo. They probably had the best prices that I found at the time. So I would jump onto Bevmo, I would look at their order, it said what wine they wanted, so I would go to Bevmo and purchase the wine, which was roughly $10 a piece. I kept it right around that price. And Bevmo is always running deals, so definitely look out for deals if you're gonna buy the wine yourself. So I would get 1 or 2 of those, or let the order stack up in a day or 2 and get 8 or 9, 10 bottles at a time, and then set those aside. And then once I got home that night, I would go through, I would pour these individual fragrances and then put those aside along with their wine, and then I would print out their labels, which I would cut up into 3s, and then basically just put all this stuff together in a bag for them. And then once it started to come down, I started to think about other things to make the presentation of the night feel a little bit nicer. The venue that I chose was a really nice venue. I'll put some pictures up here. Very nice, very beautiful inside. It overlooks the water, so it was a really nice spot. Basically, I was charging $50 for the night, so I definitely wanted to feel like that $50 went towards something. Even though the candles and the wine together are worth more than the $50. I mean, the candles sell anywhere from $10 to $15 a piece, and the wine is normally $10 to $15 to $20 a piece, depending on the wine that I bought. So definitely worth it. And people just going out for a date night, it was definitely worth it, but I wanted to kind of step it up a little bit. So what I was doing was I went out and I bought bags for everything. So basically when everybody showed up, I had black and gold wine bags. So basically everything was set up, and I've got a picture right here again. Everything was set up against the back wall, and it had a name tag on it, so you could come in, find your name, your wine was there, and then in front of that was your labels and your scent so that you could grab that and take it back to the table. And then of course when everybody left, I had black and gold bags that they could choose from so that they could put everything in there and leave with it. So once the class started to fill up, and actually I'd say probably about 3 weeks before, right as I started to get everything ready, I started to do a little bit of advertising. I went on Facebook and of course hit up everybody I knew locally and said, hey, I'm doing a wine night. I went into my Instagram profile and started tagging everything I was doing. Candle making, wine night, ladies night, any hashtag that somebody would look at locally. I posted in a few different spots around town. We're in Tacoma, Gig Harbor, Lakewood, anything like that. And then I actually started to run a couple Facebook ads for about $20 a piece. I think I ran 4 of those, maybe three or four of those, and I ran them for $20, like 2-3 days a piece, and just in the local area. And I targeted an age group. I think I targeted maybe, I would have to look it up again, but I think it was like 25 to 40 or something like that. And then of course I used different search terms so that it only went to people that were into wine, into candle making, in the area. So it really focused and targeted, and I'd have to go through and look at the numbers on that one again, but the ad was seen by several thousand people, which was really nice. So started to get a lot of signups from that one. At work, I work in a big building, so I put that out there also, so I got a few people from work. So I put it on our ad board at work and just said that there was a candle making wine night coming up, so I got a few signups from that one as well. And I will say, I didn't advertise any of this until I had the venue set. And the venue, I searched around for a little bit and I finally found somebody that works down the way. They're a friend of a friend, and they actually manage a venue that's used for weddings and receptions and dinners like that, and that's how I found this one. So once I booked that one, I went ahead and did the advertising and then started buying everything for it. So now we come into the very first night, getting everything set up. Left work and I had everything with me. I had a couple totes full of the wax, the jars, the wine, the bags, literally everything, of course, and then got down there a couple hours early so I could set up. And set it up, and I've got pictures here again, so that the tables were all kind of stacked around the 2 melters. That way I could talk around the melters and talk to everybody that was in there. So the first night we had 21 people, and the second night I had 27 people. And it was kind of nice having fewer people the first night. That way I could kind of get a test run. The only, I wouldn't say a negative thing or a bad thing about the first night was the second night I knew probably half the people that were coming. It was people that I knew from the gym or the Y or town or work. So I was a little bit more comfortable knowing a lot of the people that were there. The first night, I think I only knew 2 people that were coming. So it was people that had just seen it and signed up. So it was nice having fewer people, but didn't have the comfort of knowing the people, so I could kind of just go into it and not be, of course, nervous to make sure everything went right. So get into the first night, get in there, and got everything set up, started to do the melters. And I brought 2 melters. I had one that I've been using for months, and I had another one that I just set up. I set up this melter and I had never tested it. And the second I plugged it in, it started leaking wax everywhere. So within minutes, there was wax all over the floor. I shut it off and there was nothing I could do for it. So I went from having 2 melters and the entire night planned to having 1 melter. And the melters I use hold about 12 pounds of wax. So 12 pounds of wax, it's probably a little bit less than that once you start pouring it out and all that kind of stuff. 12 pounds of wax is gonna cover 12 people, and I had 21. So I knew immediately started calculating in my head what was gonna happen. So I knew I would have to pour a few people, put some more wax in there and let it melt down. So I knew I was gonna be filling that thing up and letting it melt down before I could pour probably a good 3 or 4 times, which isn't a huge deal, but when you're running in a time crunch like that where you want to get people run through really fast, that was a big one. And that started to really slow things down. We paced it pretty well, so it wasn't a huge deal, and I let everybody know very upfront, we're down to 1 melter, so we're gonna kind of go through table at a time. It didn't hold me back too much. People still got out of there in a reasonable time, but it didn't give me the time at the individual tables that I wanted to, which was kind of a bad thing for me. Everybody else said that they had a great time, so it ended up not being a bad thing for the night in general. But for me, I wish I could have spent a little bit more time at the individual tables rather than running back to the melter to refill it and everything like that. The other bad thing about the melter being down to 1 was I had to raise the temperature on the melter so that it could melt the wax quicker, which was a problem because I had both melters set at the perfect temperature. So as soon as you use the melter, you pour it into the pouring pitcher, you add your fragrance immediately and you can pour. So I had this all planned out, and so you would pour the wax, pour the fragrance, pour the candle, and then you let it sit. And it was at a low enough temperature to where it wouldn't take that long, maybe 20 to 30 minutes for the candle to cool to the point where you could fix a sinkhole and they'd be able to take it. So bumping the temperature up on the melter so that it could melt the wax quicker, it threw off the waiting time once they poured, which again wasn't a huge deal, but it definitely slowed things down by a good 5 or 10 minutes. So with everybody coming in, I set the time for the event from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and I sent out an email. Everybody that signed up through the website put in their email, so I had everybody's emails in, and that's the other good thing about Squarespace is they have a marketing section in their website which helped with a lot of this stuff. So I put in the 21 email addresses into a template and sent it out to everybody and basically said, here's the event, here's what we're gonna be doing. I offered the chance to make more candles if they wanted to, and then put everything in their directions to the place, anything to make the night easier for the end consumer, and just basically just keep everybody up to date. So I was kind of thinking over the course, I said in the email, it's not a real prompt event. You don't have to be there directly at 6, but please come in between 6 and 7. That way you have enough time for your candles to cool and you're out of there by a certain time. And so I had people coming in. A few people showed up about 10 minutes early, had everyone wait till around 6:05, and I had probably about half the people there. So I thought that was gonna work to my advantage. So I started to tell everyone, we're gonna go ahead and get started, and I'll just catch the next people when they come in. And then I started to go through, talking to the entire group, which was probably about 10 people at the time. Started to go through, started to talk about the jars, the wax, and maybe about 5 minutes into it, the entire rest of the group came in. So I then had the 21 people, everybody there at the same time. So that messed me up a little bit. I had to kind of put everybody on hold just for a second so that I could tell these people, grab a glass of wine. And I did have 2 friends there helping me, so there was a huge help. It wasn't just me by myself. There's no way I would have been able to do it by myself. I had them getting them set up with refreshments, the wine, and then grab their fragrances and come back to the table. So by that time, I had half the people already putting labels, placing their wicks, and then I had the other half that I was explaining again. And the night definitely got a rhythm to it. So I think I had that first night, I think I had 4, maybe 5 tables. There was about 5 people on each one, maybe 4 on some others. So about 5 different tables. So I would go to each one, show them how to do everything. And I didn't have, so go through, show them exactly how to place the wicks, how to place the labels, and then as I kind of went from table to table, I went back to the first one and then said, hey, one by one, let's all come over. We'll go ahead and pour the wax. And then they would come over, I'd pour just enough of the wax, they'd add their fragrance and then pour their candles. And once they were done pouring, it freed me up a little bit to kind of hit some of the other tables, because once they pour, there's really nothing they can do but wait at that time. So they ended up kind of talking amongst themselves. A lot of people came in with groups. They got another glass of wine or some refreshments or whatever was there. And then I kind of went down the line and kept it going. This worked pretty well going from table to table. I would definitely recommend having somebody there that knows the candles along with you. The 2 people that I had there were so glad that they were there, but they hadn't been doing, one of them had only been doing candles for like a week, so she was somewhat familiar. And the other one was a friend of mine who was there to help. She had never made candles, so she couldn't actually help me on that side, so she was helping me with wine. But the other one was kind of bouncing around a little bit, giving tips when she could, but trying to go from table to table was a little bit of a struggle. So as the night went on, go from table to table, showing everybody how to place their wicks, how to do everything. We ended up going through and getting everything poured. And during this whole time, I'm going from table to table, back to the melter, basically making sure that there's a new block of wax in it every single time. So it's never running out of wax. It's always heating more. not testing that melter in the very beginning really put me behind schedule, and it was definitely needed. So we got everything through. Everything was really good. I think everybody started to make their candles probably around 6:10, 6:15, and people were leaving probably 7:30 to 7:45. So it was actually pretty quick, and the melter didn't really slow me down as much as I thought it would. And then of course, at the end of the night, just kind of left everything there, and basically left everything there so we could have an easy setup for the next night. Okay, so at the end of the night, I went home. I had to come home with every single one of the wine glasses. I ran them through the dishwasher because I had to have everything set and ready for the very next night. I came home, immediately fixed that melter, went through and sealed it, which I can't believe I forgot to seal the thing or even test it. So went home, sealed the melter, washed all the wine glasses, and got everything set up for the next night, which was another round of labels, the bags, the wine, everything ready for the next night. The next night was a little bit more comfortable for me, just because, like I said, I knew about half the people, and then the other half of people I didn't know, which was fine again. So going into that night, it was definitely a little bit more set up, but I ran into other issues on that night, because this night, the second night, I had 27 people, and 27 people, all with a couple glasses of wine in them, started to get extremely loud. It was a little bit more difficult getting from table to table. I think we had probably 6 or 7 tables set up at this point, and everybody showed up at the same time on this one. So I immediately started to go through, tried to talk to everybody at the group at once, which definitely didn't work well. And then I started to go from table to table. And of course I let everybody know I'm gonna be bouncing from table to table. Basically kind of set expectations from the get-go so that people aren't waiting around wondering what the heck is going on. So told everybody I'm gonna get from table to table. If you have any questions, please just holler my name. I'll run over immediately and go through and set everything. And basically the night went exactly the same way. Showed them how to place their wicks, put the labels on, explained a couple things, and then got everybody over table by table to go through and pour their wax, pour their fragrance, and then pour their candles. So this night actually went a little bit smoother. Everyone was there probably a little bit later than they were the next night, just because there were more people, but everybody had a really good time. And then along with everybody having their own wine that they could take with them and the candles, we had, of course, wine on the table, and I had a friend of mine pouring that for them. So once you get a few glasses of wine into people, they're gonna have fun no matter what. So it was a really nice night. It ended up going well, extremely well overall. But there were definitely a lot of things that I would fix. So now that I've kind of covered that one, we'll go into everything that I would fix and tell you to look out for on the next time I'm gonna do it, and something that you can look out for when you do it. Now the first one starting out is the venue itself. The venue that I chose was a little bit more expensive than I wanted to do, but it was the only one I could really find at the time. I mean, I could have waited a little bit longer, but I wanted to get this done before Christmas. So we went ahead and picked this one. It was a little bit more than I thought it was gonna be. And also the size of it was a little bit bigger. It's normally a big reception hall or venue. And I knew that we were only gonna be taking up not even close to half of it. So that was kind of a concern of mine. I didn't want people to feel like they were in just a gigantic area and just feel like it was overwhelming. It wasn't actually too bad, but I definitely would have chosen a venue that fit the amount of people a little bit better. The second one was the wine. I found Bevmo to be very good. Of course, you can go to any grocery store, Albertson, Safeway, whatever you have around your area, and Bevmo, Costco, they all have very good prices, but I wanted to mix it up a little bit. And again, I don't know wine that well, so I wanted to make sure that I was getting nice wine for people and not picking out something that was just awful and I had no idea. So I went to Bevmo. Bevmo usually, through this whole time, they were running a buy two for the price of one. So I ended up getting a lot of these bottles for half price. They raise their prices a little bit and then drop it to half price. So it's not a $15 bottle for $7 like you would think. Their $15 bottle is probably normally like $10 at another store. So you're still getting it for a discount, but it's not the discount that buy two get one free you'd normally think of. The one area that I found out later and I bought a couple bottles from was Grocery Outlet. I don't know if you have them around your area, but we have them here in our area, and they actually have some pretty nice wine at $3, $4, $5 a bottle. That was a huge find for me. I wish I would have found that one much earlier on, because I ended up getting probably my last 10 bottles at Grocery Outlet, and it was actually nice wine too. I made sure to ask my coworker, and there's probably some grocery stores around you that are like that, just a discount store. They buy cases that somebody else can't move and then they push them through. So I went through and I bought a lot of bottles there. That right there could have saved me a lot of money if I would have bought that from the beginning instead of going to Bevmo or Costco or Albertsons, anything like that. One of the other things I would definitely change was going from these jars right here. They're very nice jars. They worked extremely well, but the sinkholes are definitely something that you have to consider. If I'm gonna do this again, and when I do this again, I'm gonna stick with the tins. People like the tins, they look really nice, and you can pour them and forget them. You don't have to go back through and fix any sinkholes. All right, so the wine is one of those areas where, depending on the event that you're setting up, that's one of those areas that you could either make a little bit of money on or lose a little bit of money on. If you're doing your own wine like I did, you're gonna be into it for probably, I don't know, depending on how kind of thrifty you are and you look around, you're probably looking anywhere from $8 to $10 a bottle per person. You'd be much better off if you can get a winery to come in. That's the other thing, is if you're gonna do your own event and have somebody come in, you need to hire a caterer or somebody with a liquor license. Usually most event or venues have caterers that they want you to bring in. So if I was gonna have them come in and just pour wine, I might have saved a little bit of money there, and that would probably be the better option. I think people still would have signed up for this event without the bottle of wine. Would have only had to drop my price on the ticket price by maybe $5. So instead of $50, I think people still would have paid $40 or $45 to make their own candles and have wine and everything on hand. Now, if you have a winery close or a wine bar close, that is a much better option. And the way that I handled that one with the ones that I talked to before and the ones I'm talking to now, because I have another one of these planned, the place that I want to do this, I'm gonna handle everything. And the ticket price includes 1 glass of wine, which is basically the way that the paint and wine nights do it. It includes 1 glass of wine, and then the people that come in, they purchase any wine that they want after that, which is still a pretty good deal. So depending on the establishment that you go into, or the wine bar, the restaurant, whatever you're going, I told them every single ticket is a guaranteed sale. So I would automatically guarantee them I'm bringing in 10, 15, 20 people. So whatever that is, find out what their house wine is. What's their base price, $5, $6, $8 a bottle or a glass, and tell them no matter how many people I bring in, which could be a maximum of 20, but if I only bring in 10, I'm still gonna give them the 20 person price point. So $5, $6, $7 per person times 20 people, they're gonna go ahead and get that, so that they're not losing money just having you come in. So you want to make it beneficial for yourself as well as the restaurant or the wine bar. So currently I'm talking to a few different places like that so that I can drop that price, because the wine, I ended up spending probably about $480, 48 people. The average bottle of wine was around $10, so give or take $480 for the wine for this event. So the way this whole thing came down was I had 48 people show up, which was $50 per person, which worked out to about $2,400, or exactly $2,400. The venue that I rented was $500, so minus that. The wine was right around $480. The supplies per person coming in were right around $7.50 to $8 per person. That's the jars, the tins, wicks, wax, fragrance, everything like that. It usually works out to around $7.50 to $8 per person. And then of course there were random supplies like this stuff here, that's 50 cents to $1 per person. So all in all, everything came down, and so I brought in $2,400 after paying everything out. The profit was right around $1,000, give or take a few. It was a little bit over that actually. I haven't gone through and added up absolutely everything. And for this one, I ended up spending a little bit more than I would have, just because I wanted to make it a little bit more for people coming in. And like I said, this event, if you're gonna do this, you can definitely save a lot of money in some areas that I didn't. I know that now. The wine I could definitely save money in. The venue for sure I can save money in. So if I was to do this again with 48 people, I think the profit could be a lot closer to $1,500 and maybe a little bit more as well, depending on what you're doing, what you're bringing in. Which brings me to the next point, and that's how many people were there. 48 people over 2 nights was way too many. It's good to have everybody come in because of course your profits go up, but if I was gonna do this again, I don't know that I would go probably much more than 10 or 15 people in a group like that, just because trying to control or kind of control the crowd, especially people that are drinking, trying to control 27 people and have them all listen to you when they're kind of talking back and forth, it was almost impossible. So I think if you had a group of 10 or 15 people that you could talk to everybody, just 2 or 3 tables. You'd be able to hit the tables, show them the wicks, show them how to place everything. You'd be much more attentive. But the only thing with that is your profits are gonna go way down. So a 10 or 15 person group, you're not gonna be making $1,000, of course. It's gonna go way down, but you'd be able to manage that more. Your profits would still be there, it's just not gonna be as big. So if you can find an event place that you could have 10 or 15 people and you could eliminate your wine costs, some of your supplies costs, and stuff like that, and still bring people in, I don't think people have any problem paying the $40 or $45 price point. I think you could definitely do 50, but then again, charging $50 for an event like this, you're really gonna have to do something pretty special. You can have a couple different candles to choose from, different scents to choose from. The one thing that I really missed on this one that I really wished I could have covered was actually going into detail. The one thing that would have made it better was having fewer people there. Having fewer people there would have helped out in being able to explain the differences between the wicks, the wax. That's one thing that I had really planned on and I didn't get a chance to do. And that's just because there were so many people there, I couldn't take any time, especially with the melter breaking the first night, I couldn't take any time to tell them the difference between the paraffins, the soys, why you use a wood wick or a cotton wick. So that stuff was really missed. And if you have a smaller group, less people attending, you can really go into and cover stuff like that, which is gonna help that higher price point. So people will definitely come in, they will gladly pay that. I mean, if they're getting 3 really nice candles that normally sell for $10 or $15, and you're getting wine and it's a nice environment, it's a good night out, people don't mind paying $50 for that. Depending on what you do, you really wanna make sure that that price point is correct, because if you're bringing people in for $50 and you make 3 candles and then they're out, they're probably not gonna come back again. So making sure that they have a good time is definitely obviously high on the list of priorities. And the other thing that I forgot was while people were making candles, I didn't do it on the first night because we just ran out of time and I didn't have any time to actually go back through and have people, and I just didn't have any time to keep the melter going with, I was running so much that we didn't have anybody come back and actually make more candles. So when everybody was there on the second night, once everybody poured their candles, we let everybody know that we had more, that they had an opportunity to make more candles. So we had extra jars for an additional $20. You could make another 3 candles, and we had a lot of people sign up for that one. So that was a real nice addition, basically the profit of the night. So anything that was made from that was not anything that I counted, because I knew exactly coming into this what I was going to be making. So any candles or any extras that I got anybody else to make really helped out. And of course I had my candles and everything off to the side, and I sold a bunch of those while I was there. So additionally, on top of everything that was there, I made probably an additional $200 or $300, which I put that into the complete breakdown. So supplies and everything, I still came out around $1,000 ahead in this whole thing. And I think that's pretty much it. I know I'm gonna go back and watch this, and I'm gonna try to fill in some gap of some things I definitely missed. I need to go back and watch this to make sure I covered everything, all the pros, the cons. I've had a lot of people asking me this, specific questions that I'm hoping I caught them all. But if I did miss something, or if there's something about this that you just didn't get enough detail on, or you want a longer explanation, please ask them in the comments below. I answer every single one of them. And of course, like the video, subscribe for more, and you can always get in contact with me through the website, standleyhandcrafted.com. Join us over at the Facebook DIY candle making group. I've got a link for that down in the video description down below. And of course, you can get in touch and follow along with everything on Instagram, Snapchat, and Facebook at Standley Handcrafted. Thank you.